Jeremy Corbyn's version of Zionism is the 1967 UN version, based on international law. In Israel, he supports the existence of a Jewish state, but he also supports the UN perspective on that, which outlaws the theft of land and the forbidding of the ownership of land by the people who live in it or Palestinian. I mean, that seems to me pretty racist there, Maajid. If you're calling someone who objects to that a racist, I think that kind of makes you a racist, you know what I mean, to me. That is racist behaviour, to stop people owning land in their own country.
Hold on, George. Hold on a minute. Hold your horses. Hold on. Corbyn referred to a group of people in othering language. The group of people he was referring to, in the context of the sentence he uttered, it would have made no sense if he was referring to Theresa May or any other white English person as saying they speak English and they don't understand English irony. That doesn't make any sense. He was referring to British Jews in that speech. And as you just heard from the person he was directly referring to, who claims that Corbyn knew exactly who he was. So if you're referring to a minority group and you're othering them by inferring they don't necessarily understand how to be English properly, George, you're meant to be, I imagine, a leftist. Leftists generally are uber sensitive about every microaggression of racism they see coming from the right. Are you seriously telling me that you can't see those othering comments of Corbyn in any way as othering a minority group in this country?
Well, I'm saying that something that's very small and subtle has been magnified enormously.
Wait. We'll get to whether it's magnified, George.
Corbyn is unacceptable.
George, we'll get to whether it's magnified. First, do you agree that it was othering of a minority community?
I'm not sure of the context. This is a really subtle thing here. He was addressing a particular small group who misunderstood a particular point. I mean, to me, it's making massive mountains out of molehills.
George, what is your background, George? Tell us a bit about yourself. Do you vote Corbyn? Are you a leftist? Who are you?
I kind of struggle to vote for anyone now. I personally know, I've seen Corbyn in action as an individual, and I have fantastic respect for him because I used to run a little charity in Croydon.
What are you typically, what we describe as white English? Who are you?
Sorry?
Are you white English?
Well, my family are Irish, but I mean...
No. You're born in England, right?
I mean, the point is, Corbyn...
No, that's not the point. George, I'm asking you a question. I'll ask you what the point is.
Yeah, well, this is your MI5 techniques here. I mean,
there we are. Wow.
When you've got problems with an argument, you start forcing questions on people and force them into corners...
Do you think I'm MI5, George?
That are inappropriate to the argument.
Do you think I'm MI5?
That's the whole training is this. I mean,
do you think I've been trained by the MI5?
Brian does it. It's a technique that LBC presenters use. When they've got a problem, they ask a question and demand an answer to that question because it goes nowhere that the caller wants to go. That's what it's about.
Do you think I'm trained by MI5?
I think there's agencies that train presenters. It's obvious, okay? And there's been books written about this, okay? Books written
Which
about
ones?
I've read.
Which ones?
Well, about the CIA and the media, global media. It doesn't matter about stuff like that. I mean, how
if it doesn't matter, I'd ask you why you raised it. You've just suggested I'm trained by MI5, and now you're saying it doesn't matter.
About your technique.
My technique trained by MI5.
When you get in a problem with an argument, trying to force people to answer an inappropriate question.
Yeah. Okay, so now considering you've called up on a national radio show where I'm the host and you're the guest, are you going to do me the courtesy of actually addressing a question I raised to you?
Well, I know that you've got the power in this conversation, but I've responded to your question by saying...
Well, George, no. Talking about power dynamics, George, considering you are a lefty that has great respect for Corbyn...
I'm not a lefty anymore. I'm not neither left
really?
nor right.
Okay, considering you're somebody that has great respect for Corbyn the lefty, and, really, really do respect him so much that you've called on a national radio show to defend him, George, I'm going to put it to you, when you talk about power, I'm going to put it to you how entirely inappropriate it is for white English George to call up and say that brown Pakistani origin Maajid is the racist for being concerned about othering of minority communities in this country. Do you not see that in any way that you're arrogantly dismissing concerns of racism coming from minority communities who you're meant to be looking after, George, as somebody, what was Corbyn's slogan, was it? A kinder, fairer politics? I mean, does that sound kind and fair to you? Dismissing minority communities' concerns who are screaming at the top of their lungs that they're worried about a rising anti-Semitism across Europe?
Are you concerned about the Palestinians being treated the way they are in Israel? Are you concerned
George, you don't get to answer my question with a question, George. You get to answer my question, and then if you like, you can ask me one. Right? So first answer my question.
LBC is not concerned. LBC is concerned about 3 hours a day of Jewish propaganda complained about Corbyn.
Jewish propaganda?
It's an operation.
Jewish propaganda, George. George, Jewish propaganda.
He is unacceptable to the Jewish community in this country.
George, did you just use the word Jewish propaganda?
0.5% of the population want to dictate to the 99.5% here. I do not.
Who's that 0.5%, George?
Sorry?
Who is that 0.5% you refer to?
The Jewish community.
Right, there you are. George, you're a disgusting anti-Semite who believes in Jewish controlling the media, conspiracy theories. You believe Jews are dictating to the rest of the country how to behave. You, calling in to defend Corbyn, have just proven my point. You're an anti-Semite, George, and I suggest to you go and check your privilege and go and purge yourself of that disgusting trait you have known as racism. Because it has seeped so deep inside you that while calling to defend Corbyn against racism, you're oblivious to the fact that you're preaching it yourself. Really, that's really low of you, George, to say the Jews control the media and that being 0.5% of this country, they control the rest of the country. Does it not occur to you that's exactly the kind of propaganda Hitler pushed before he engaged in the Holocaust? It's disgusting, George. You make me sick. Frankly, I don't ever want to speak to you again. Can everyone please make sure I never speak to George again? That's disgusting.